Warning, the following podcast contains adult language, themes, and situations. Also, the film we're about to talk about is going to be spoiled thoroughly. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy this show.
How is it remotely possible that one of the greatest directors of all time could join forces with the human powerhouse that is Nicolas Cage at the height of his career and still manage to come out with a box office bomb? We'll find out as we slog through 2 hours of Martin Scorsese hitting random on the jukebox and setting it to guys driving around in ambulances as we break down Bringing Out the Dead.
Okay, let's run.
I'm like a prickly pear.
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole! Porker, how'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
Hey, have you ever been dragged to the sidewalk and beat until you
Pissed blood!
Welcome to One Cage at a Time, the show where we break down every single Nicolas Cage movie, one film at a time. Here are your hosts, Patrick, Vince, and Nigel.
After kind of killing some random teenage girl on the street by not choosing the proper medical course of action, Frank Pierce must confront his demons as he slowly collapses from the hellish nightmare of working as a paramedic in early 90s New York City.
Let's see who's joining Nick on this adventure.
Bringing Out the Dead features an incredible cast, including John Goodman, Ving Rhames, Tom Sizemore, Nick's then-wife Patricia Arquette, and of course, the guy Martin Scorsese went to between his love affairs with Robert DeNiro and Leonardo DiCaprio, Academy Award winner and God among men, Nicolas Kim Coppola, better known as Nicolas Cage. Woo!
Patrick, hit us with some stats, won't you?
This movie was released on October 22nd, 1999, which is coincidentally my wife and I's anniversary. So, yeah.
Nice.
Nice going, Martin Scorsese. It had a budget of $32 million, but only made back 16.8, which is pretty bad as far as Scorsese is concerned. He has a tendency to work in kind of like arty, art house type movies, which generally don't make a ton at the box office. They're more of like, cult classics, rentals, that kind of stuff. People who are going to sit there and just meticulously go through them, kind of like this movie. We're going to go meticulously through this movie. Of course, it was directed by the great Martin Scorsese, but it was written by Paul Schrader, who, among his many, many credits, he has done 4 movies with Martin Scorsese. Taxi Driver, which might be the best Scorsese movie of all time. Raging Bull, which might be the second best Scorsese movie of all time, depending on where Goodfellas lands on your list. There's a lot of them at this point that could land in that top 5. I know, I think it was Nigel, you were talking about Gangs of New York, that you didn't really like it, but Gangs of New York, I love that movie. Love that movie. Last Temptation of Christ, and of course, Bringing Out the Dead. So 4 movies. This is the last one that Paul Schrader has worked with Scorsese on, and maybe the performance and overall subdued response to this movie, which I feel like we all kind of had the same sort of subdued, like, all right, kind of response to it. Yeah. It was based, of course, on a book by Joe Connolly called Bringing Out the Dead. And Joe Connolly worked as a paramedic in New York City during early 90s, the kind of the worst time. You could go back to the 70s, 80s. Things were bad in New York City, and then they kind of got cleaned up. But yeah, everything that happens in the movie is based on a true story. Based on his life and based on the paramedics around him. So he kind of took a broad strokes collection of paramedics that he knew and his own story and threw them into a stew and kind of made a fictionalized version of the shit that he had to go through as a paramedic in New York. 121 minutes, which is Actually kind of a short movie for Martin Scorsese. As we talked about offline, we were talking about The Irishman and just what a absolute slog that movie is. Like 4 hours long, could have been about an hour and a half, I think. And it just creepy blue eyes from Robert DeNiro the whole movie, and weird de-aging where he looks like a 70-year-old man kind of dressed up like a 20-year-old, but not looking like a 20-year-old at all. Too bad Nick Cage isn't in that movie, so we can rip it apart.
Watch that one.
Yeah. This movie was shot, I didn't realize until I looked it up, but this movie was shot by the legendary Robert Richardson, who, amongst his many credits himself, 7 Scorsese movies, 11 Oliver Stone movies, and 6 Quentin Tarantino movies. 10 total Academy Award nominations, 3 total wins. On my list of, my favorite directors of photography, he's probably only second to like Roger Deakins, who shot a lot of the Coen Brothers movies, and he's been working with Denis Villeneuve recently, like The Arrival and the new Blade Runner movie, shooting the new Dune movie. So, yeah. As far as ratings are concerned, so Bringing Out the Dead got a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty good. It's pretty solid. 6.70 out of 10. That's based on 109 reviews. By the way, this is going to date this podcast, but did you see that Citizen Kane got bumped down from 100% because of a review that they
found an old review
just added in from like the 30s or whatever. Wow. Yeah. It's no longer 100%.
Unwatchable now.
Yeah, fuck that
Truly
movie.
unwatchable.
No longer the top movie of all time. Metacritic score was about the same, 70%, and the audience score was also 70%. So on the whole, people liked it, but didn't love it, which I feel like that's kind of our sentiment as well.
Yep.
How about a Coppola quick facts?
In the 90s, Martin Scorsese made 6 films: Goodfellas, Cape Fear, The Age of Innocence, Casino, Kundun, and Bringing Out the Dead. Every one of those films received at least 1 Academy Award nomination, except for one, Bringing Out the Dead. Which, kind of shows a little bit.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that Kundun won, because I that was one of those movies that came out and I was like, what is this? Probably never going to watch it. Kind of like that new one that he did with Spider-Man, the Spider-Man kid.
Silence?
Yeah, Silence. That's a movie where I watched the trailer and it was just kind of like, nah.
I like historical stuff, so I do want to watch it at some point. I've heard it's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
I forgot that movie came out.
Yeah, see? There you go.
Yeah.
Fun fact for you, Paul Schrader, the guy who wrote the screenplay for this movie, also wrote the film Affliction, which, as we mentioned in our Deadfall episode, is the movie that James Coburn won an Oscar for 4 short years after starring alongside Nick Cage as the coked-out lunatic Eddie King. I thought that was
Just
a fun
goes to
coincidence.
show, don't
and all
write
this,
people off based on like one movie,
Yeah.
I would definitely say that James Coburn wasn't the problem in that movie, that's for sure. Before writing the script, Paul Schrader went out on several ambulance runs to get a real flavor of what the crews have to put up with on a normal night. The first night he rode with them, he had to contend with the grisly sight of seeing a homeless man who'd been cut in half by a subway train. That would be a fun first thing to see.
Yeah. I feel like everything would suck after that. Like, you just peaked. Like, what else are you going to see? And it's all going to be boring compared to that.
I mean, I kind of wish that maybe he would have written it into the movie a little bit. Might have added a little bit more
something interesting.
A little more drama to the movie. This little factoid makes a whole lot of sense after watching the movie. Paul Schrader's first choice and the person he had in mind while he was writing the script was Edward Norton for the role of Frank Pierce, which actually really makes sense. I think Ed Norton would have actually been great in that role. Whereas Nick Cage is kind of just wasted. I mean, you took Nick Cage, who is Nick Cage, and kind of just made him a boring average guy that's just kind of there for most of the movie for other insane shit to swirl around. He's just kind of our gateway into this, our everyman. And I think Ed Norton might have played that role better, honestly.
Yeah. It fits some of the other roles he's done in the past.
I don't know if that would have made the movie any better, but that definitely would have worked for the character.
Yeah. Martin Scorsese and Nicolas Cage actually also rode along with New York City paramedics in preparation for the filming. In the Vampire's Kiss commentary, he actually mentioned filming Bringing Out the Dead, because the commentary was recorded, I think, in like the early 2000s for Vampire's Kiss. And he talked about how when they were filming Vampire's Kiss, it was chaos in the streets. You know, there's just all sorts of, crimes going on, lots of shootings, the crack epidemic was going on and all that kind of stuff.
So they thinks twice about a guy walking around covered in blood asking people to murder him with a piece of wood. So he said that by the time they got around to filming Bringing Out the Dead in 1999, it was cleaned up. Like, the city was way cleaner, and like they actually had a hard time finding anything. They would like sit in the ambulance for hours and hours and have nothing to do. You know, just kind of chit chatting with the paramedics. I saw some speculation that this was like Scorsese's last goodbye to like his version of New York City from the 70s and 80s that he filmed in, where before they cleaned it all up and stuff, which kind of might be why the movie turned out the way it just kind of has that feeling of just like
a grit.
I don't know. Grit, but it's also kind of dull. Like it's sort of like a dying gasp of I don't know if you want to call it vibrancy that was crime waves and stuff happening in the 70s and 80s, but it definitely makes for interesting movies. And this came out in 99, it says at the start this takes place in the early 90s, so it's still like obviously looking back on, what the city, I guess the gory days before the city was cleaned up.
The city lost some of its character after.
Also, apparently, Scorsese was sober for this movie.
Really?
So after a couple of decades of coke use and stuff. So
that might explain a lot too.
That might actually be
just kind of subdued
the overall movie.
And it explains some of his bridges from scene to scene with the chaotic music and movement of the ambulance and shit like that.
Yeah. Scorsese said that he lived near one of these, one of the paramedic hubs where they would come out of all the time, where the ambulances would come out of, and this was kind of his love letter to that, because he had to spend a lot of time around paramedics and stuff because of his family, different ailments that he's had to deal with and stuff. So this is kind of, he had always wanted to do something like this. This was actually pitched to him by somebody else. So they read the script and they were like, this seems like a Scorsese movie. And they threw it his way, and it just kind of aligned with that, his desire to make one of them. He has said, though, that he didn't like shooting this movie at all. It was shot over the period of 65 days, and all of it was filmed at night in the middle of December in super, harsh conditions, freezing cold New York City in December at night, in the street, or I think one third of the movie takes place inside of an ambulance, so most of it was probably in that cramped little ambulance, which I'm sure they had to modify in some way, probably cut the side off of one of them or something. Every night during filming, Nicolas Cage would go through an average of 10 shirts through a combination of blood, sweat, and mud. They were constantly shooting blood on him over and over and over again. And this, if you watch, almost every night ends with him covered in blood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Director Martin Scorsese provides the voice of the male dispatcher. One of them. I feel like there's multiple, but he is kind of the main one that you keep hearing cracking jokes over over the thing, which I'll mention in the breakdown. His first one, at least. And then Queen Latifah plays the female dispatcher Love in a very early role. I think. Well, I don't know if it was that early, but she hadn't really been around too much. She mostly had her hip hop career at that point, and hadn't done a
Just
ton
got
of
thrown in right at the end of the credits.
Yeah.
Like after all the credits rolled, it was like, and Queen Latifah as Dispatcher Love. It's like, what?
I was gonna say this is like right on the cusp of her breaking into the film industry.
Yeah, this is a fun little fact that I don't know if this is interesting to anybody else, but this movie and Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp were the last two films to be released on Laserdisc. It's kind of interesting. At one point, everybody thought Laserdisc was going to take over everything, and I remember renting out Laserdiscs when I was in high school or middle school, and putting them in that big giant thing. I was like, oh my god, this would be so cool to have at home. But then it never caught on because DVDs are this big and a hell of a lot cheaper to produce. But Laserdiscs were these big, thick, record-sized platters that were, they felt substantial. I mean, they were heavy. So I feel like it was a cooler medium.
Apparently this movie has never been released on Blu-ray. That's something I was reading while I was...
You would think of Scorsese's other films would warrant a release just on that, because we'll release every single Martin Scorsese movie at some point. But that's a fun fact.
Yeah, this has apparently never gotten a Blu-ray release.
Can't imagine why, because most of us have never heard of this movie, and most of us who even follow Martin Scorsese's career had never heard of this movie. And I think this is the only pairing that he ever had with Nick Cage. Which is kind of sad, because I would love to see Nick Cage as some, unhinged hitman or something in a Scorsese movie. Maybe that could still happen someday. We can hold out hope.
I feel like that ship sailed.
He's kind of amazing. We're at the cusp of a Nicolas Cage renaissance that's going on. He's gotten so much critical adornment from Mandy and Color Out of Space and those movies that he's sort of kind of coming back. He got National Treasure 3. They greenlit that, so maybe.
He's on the rise again, baby.
But then again, how old is Martin Scorsese now?
He's getting up there.
He's 85 or something.
Getting up there, yeah.
How much longer is he going to be making movies?
Who knows? I mean, Clint Eastwood is still making movies. He's 92 now. So
yeah, that's true.
And then the final little quick fact is this is the first pairing of John Goodman and Nick Cage since Raising Arizona, which is my absolute favorite Nicolas Cage movie of all time. I can't wait to do that. That movie's so fucking good. And then also the first pairing of Nick Cage and Ving Rhames since Con Air. In the behind the scenes, Nick Cage was very complimentary of Ving Rhames and says that he loves working with him. So
he seems really fun.
Yeah. Personally, man, I think we should do Walking next.
Dude, we're 7 movies into this thing. It's going to be 6 years before we even finish Cage. Speaking of which, I might have to watch our next film on Crackle like an idiot. Who even knew Crackle was still a thing?
I thought Nigel said he's going to watch The Weatherman on Crackle.
Yeah, and he's going to have a terrible time. I mean, the sound is awful. There's ads every couple of seconds. I wouldn't be surprised if he hates that classic 2005 incredible Nicolas Cage movie directed by Gore Verbinski and featuring Michael Caine, Hope Davis, and Nicholas Hoult just because of how shitty his experience is.
Looks like they have it on...
Insert your preferred streaming service here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's only available in England, but still.
Well, a lot of good that does me, man. Thanks for that. Guess I'm heading to shitty Crackle.
Bro, you don't use Surfshark?
What the hell is a Surfshark?
It's a VPN.
What the hell is a VPN?
A virtual private network, or VPN, is a type of network that imitates a private one on a public one.
What does that have to do with the incredible comedy drama The Weatherman, written by Steve Conrad?
Well, a VPN allows you to use internet with enhanced security and privacy. So, in a nutshell, a VPN helps you stay secure when using public Wi-Fi or hotspots. So for me, since I'm always on public Wi-Fi, I use Surfshark. It helps keep my internet traffic encrypted. It hides my IP, makes my browsing way more secure and private. But for our purposes, it allows us to access more internet content, including content outside of our country.
So I can watch The Weatherman as if I was in England?
Absolutely, man. The most effective way I found is to download Surfshark, and then from there, once you connect to the VPN server, you can change your IP address, which makes it appear as if you're in a different country or a different location, and gives you access to more content.
So you're saying I can listen to the incredible score of The Weatherman provided by the legendary Hans Zimmer himself without the constant annoyance of ads? How much do I have to pay for this incredible technology?
Just go to surfshark.deals/onecagepod, and you'll get 83% off and an extra 3 months, Patrick, for free.
Okay, hold on. It is surfshark.deals/ what now?
1CagePod. All you gotta do is just enter the promo code 1CagePod.
1CagePod. Wait, 83% off plus 3 free months?
Yep.
And all I have to do is enter 1CagePod at checkout.
Yeah, it's really that easy, man.
That's a smoking deal, dude. Did you tell Nigel about this?
Hell no, dude. He thinks we should do Gary Busey movies next. He can suffer with Crackle for all I care.
Visit surfshark.deals/1CagePod and enter the promo code 1CagePod to get 83% off and 3 extra months free now.
It's time for the main event. Here comes the breakdown. Act 1, the setup.
Our film begins by reminding us that New York City is a goddamn nightmare. Or at least it was in the early 90s. Nick Cage, or should we say Frank Pierce, and his partner, played by the legendary John Goodman, race across town in their ambulance while Frank monologues about how he used to be great at his job, but has lost his edge and just needs a few slow nights followed by a few days off. Which is exactly what I want to hear out of the guy who's coming to save my life. I used to be really good at this. Martin Scorsese does his best dispatcher voice, as we mentioned before, as he tries to get help for a woman who is going into cardiac arrest from having a roach crawl into her ear. While our heroes race upstairs to try and save our film's MacGuffin, Mr. Burke.
We got Mr. Burks.
We find out this man stopped breathing 10 minutes ago, but has no trouble blinking when Nick Cage's stethoscope bounces off of his face a couple of times.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I had to rewind it to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. I was like, this dude's blinking. He's blinking the whole time they're lowering him to the floor.
One complaint I had throughout this entire thing is this dude is supposed to be like completely just unconscious, nothing going on, and every time you see him, he's just looking around like nothing's going on there. Like, they perform CPR on this poor bastard while Frank creepily eyes this dying dude's daughter through the whole thing. He explains in a monologue that he recently has come to believe that he can tell when a spirit leaves the body and doesn't want to be put back. Which, of course, comes into play later in the film. Also, something you don't really want a paramedic to be thinking. Yeah, this guy doesn't want to come back. No, save me, Jesus Christ.
That there is that cool juxtaposition in this movie, though. I don't know about cool, but that was something like the sole job of a paramedic is to stabilize and keep you alive enough till you get to the hospital. And his totally flipped it on his head, and he's like, I'm basically around to just let people die.
I'm just here as a grief mop. Nothing seems to work on him until Frank comes up with the bright idea to crank some Sinatra, which instantly causes old man Burke to jump back into his body. I know weird shit happens, but I just don't think that the Sinatra played any part in that. They take Mr. Burke to the shittiest, dirtiest nightmare hospital in New York, which has a mosh pit of injured people and nut jobs filling up the lobby, blocking the way of the paramedics who are nearly turned away because there are too many patients there already.
Yeah. Like the lobby of this hospital is like prison, like what's it like onboarding or what's
like the detention, like a detention cell.
Yeah, like when you bring people to jail.
Yeah.
Oh, like a book, like a booking cell. Processing, yeah.
Yeah, booking, that's it. That's what I was thinking of.
You got that dude puking in the middle of the freaking lobby there, and everybody's just walking by. Like, oh, that's normal.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I feel like each other. I'm at least hoping this is an exaggeration, because Jesus
I feel like
Christ.
it wasn't.
I feel like
it was way too intentional to be an exaggeration. I feel like this was like they were trying to actually show this is what shit was like when this was written.
If you ever needed a reminder as to why you should never move to New York, just pop this movie in for like 5 minutes. It'll do the trick. I swear to God. I mean, maybe things have changed. Everything's gentrified now compared to what it was, but Jesus.
Completely like apathetic nurse who's just like, oh, well, you were smoking crack and you passed out. Maybe you should have just freaking died. Like, why is that our problem?
How's that our problem? You filled yourself full of drugs.
Oh, you got drunk and you fell down the stairs? Why is that our problem? Should let you die.
Maybe drink less.
A cop who inexplicably talks about himself in the third person through the entire film, named Gris, opens the door directly onto some dude's bloody foot. As a cokehead begs for help to a completely dismissive nurse, like we were just saying.
Yeah.
A crazy dude screams for water, and another nurse tells Frank to fuck off and take this dying old man and chuck him in the dumpsters. Or, something to that effect in her own words. The doctor explains that this old man is already plant food and says he doesn't have the time or space for this guy, but then lists off every single patient by name in the hospital, one by one, including a couple of dudes hooked on a new drug called Red Death, which is a mix of heroin and an amino acid or something. Gotta love those amino acids.
Yeah. We gotta stay healthy.
He then introduces Frank to Noel, the guy who is begging for the glass of water, and explains that this crazy son of a bitch drank so much water that if he has any more, he could die. Which prompts the guy to immediately untie the restraints from this nutcase who runs into the lobby, knocking down Nick Cage and a little kid in the process. So he can get a little swig from the fountain. I hated Noel through the whole thing. It just kept coming back, and I'm like, oh, just pick someone else. I understand we're doing a microcosm of like different people, but you don't just drive around New York fucking city and run across the same guy over and over and over and over again.
Well,
actually, they probably would. Yeah, they're only in one area, so they probably would. Yeah. They probably would. I mean, especially with like the mentally ill, they probably do get called out to treat the same people over and over.
Because they're not locking them up; they're just taking them to the hospital, make sure they're not dying, and then they stick them back out, and they do the same exact thing.
Yeah. The daughter Frank has eyes for, Mary, says she also knows Noel. What a coincidence, from the neighborhood. And after he is thrown out of the hospital like a cartoon character, they have a quick heart-to-heart about her dying dad. Not her and Frank. Her and the original H2O Hydra homie, Noel. Who hugs her and then runs into the night in a hospital gown and possibly on his way to water-induced death. But, whatever. Just let him go. He's
not the hero we deserve. He's the hero we need.
Hydro Man.
Frank and John Goodman, or Larry, jump back into the ambulance and take a wrong turn down flaming garbage can, pregnant prostitute, junkie road.
Yeah, the open air hooker market.
Frank has a vision of a girl with a shitty lip ring, from here on known as Rose. I couldn't tell if it was a lip ring or just like a scar on her lip, but it was very distracting.
Yeah.
While John Goodman snaps back into his Fred Flintstone voice for some reason.
Boy, some partner you are, Frank. I could have walked there faster. I'm starving and you stopped to talk to hookers.
I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it was like, he kept kind of going back into Fred. Barney. Before
his character was confusing.
Yeah. Before Frank flips on the sirens so they can rush to get Chinese food. Which they do by driving super slowly. I don't know if you noticed that. They like flipped on the sirens, everybody scattered out of the way, and they drove about 5 miles an hour down the road.
We only have this section of the street to drive down. You guys can't speed down it, so
just take it slow. We're on a steady cam here. Meanwhile, some 70s Rolling Stone-ish music drones on in the background, as it does in damn near every scene of this movie. I know that's Martin Scorsese's thing, but fucking A, it was just...
There's one part that I actually took a note, where like an REM song plays.
Yeah.
And the subtitles just say rock music indistinct. And that's what instead of like all the other songs have like lyrics, like the subtitles will say the lyrics and stuff, but when it's an REM song, it's like indistinct rock music, which I think summarizes REM pretty well.
To a T.
I don't know what the hell Michael Stipe's saying, just
something about AIDS, I guess. Frank has a series of visions of Rose on the street and monologues that it's been 6 months since he lost her on a call, and that she was an asthmatic homeless girl. He goes on to say that her ghost won't shake from his mind and has made it impossible to block out all of the other people that he's lost along the way as well. So he's being haunted by this one particular vision, but it's making all the other, horrible things that he's seen come to light, which comes in pretty heavy. A lot of times, I feel like throughout the movie, when they're showing random people on the street, which they do a lot, it's not clear whether or not that person's actually there, or this is something that Frank has experienced, or somebody that he's lost along the way. Larry gets excited when he hears a call about a fire on the fire department's radio channel, but Frank, looking sunken-eyed like he hasn't slept in weeks, seems hesitant to push it and go somewhere where he'll have to witness more horrors. Larry and Frank tussle over the radio as Frank explains that he's completely burnt out by the job. No shit. Just look at his face, man. I mean, he doesn't want to go intentionally to a place where something bad could happen, and he's a paramedic. Like, that's their whole job.
That's what I thought was interesting. They're like picking and choosing the calls they want to go on.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a thing that really happens, but
probably
it would make sense if it is, I guess.
I would assume, yeah. Maybe, you've already gone through some pretty traumatic stuff for the night. You'd be like, wait, and let them send it to some other ambulance or something. I could totally see that happening. Probably with police officers, too. They get a call to attend to a drunk regular instead, much to Frank's delight, who happens to be a pants half down, drunk homeless dude who smells like if shit threw up in dog puke and set itself on fire. I'm guessing. just by the fact that they're like leaning out the window for the stink.
Yeah. They're Ace Ventura in it.
At the hospital, Frank runs into Mary again, where she explains that the doctor doesn't think her father will make it because he was dead for too long before they resuscitated him. Which I guess we kind of left out, but like he says that he locked himself in the bathroom when he was starting to have a heart attack, and that's why it took him. Yeah. Because I don't know, the family had to figure out like what was going on, and so he was dead already in the bathroom, I'm assuming. Yeah. So this isn't all Frank and Larry's fault. Larry and Frank head out again. Larry catches some Z's while Frank stares at him intensely and monologues about how miserable he is doing this job, that he drinks constantly and just wishes that he could sleep peacefully like Larry is. They get a call about a suicidal male who happens to be Captain Hydro himself, Noel again, covered in blood and threatening to kill himself with a broken bottle on the street. Noel shakes blood on Frank like a dog and then runs into the street so he can get run over. Frank comforts him with promises that if Noel goes with them to the hospital, he'll make sure that someone in the ER kills him. Aww.
Maybe not entirely a lie.
Maybe.
Given what we know of that ER.
Yeah. Either with pills or an injection or gas, which peps Noel right up because he I think he picks pills, right? Pills.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants pills.
I think we'd all pick pills, yeah. Backup arrives in the form of Tom Sizemore, who is Frank's ex-partner and a huge douchebag who immediately threatens to kill a clearly insane person. Tom explains that Noel had a couple of priests held hostage with a screwdriver a while back and told him after the incident that if Noel was ever caught making trouble again, he'd kill him. Which comes into play later. Seems like this Noel guy is a real pain in everybody's ass.
A little drain on society.
You know how all paramedics are just violent sociopaths?
Yeah.
You know that old chestnut? Yeah.
I thought that was just Tom Sizemore.
Maybe it's just Tom Sizemore. Tom Sizemore being Tom Sizemore.
Yeah.
I mean, the character's name is Tom.
It is Tom.
True.
I thought that was funny. Like, Tom, just be yourself. If you're a little high when you show up, that's fine. If a few punches land, just pretend it's your wife.
And that was the last one cage at a time they ever published.
Anyway, Tom hops in the ambulance and beats the shit out of Noel, while Frank kind of just says, "Don't do it, Tom," half-heartedly, while REM plays cheerfully in the background for some reason.
Indistinctly.
So that was so funny. He's like kicking this homeless person in the face, and REM is just like happily playing in the background. Happy, shiny people being beaten to death. This scene is rudely interrupted by a call on the radio for a shooting, which gives Tom a raging murder boner. So he gives Noel one last kick to the face and takes off. Neither Frank nor Larry give a shit whatsoever that another paramedic just about crushed a homeless lunatic's skull in the back of their fucking ambulance.
Yeah. Spattering blood everywhere.
Tom's great because he's like, "Oh, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. You and I, we could double team this double shooting." Like, gets all jacked up.
Yeah, he's all excited.
He loves it.
He loves it, man.
Yeah.
They arrive at the scene of a gang shooting where a dude drops some of that Red Death stuff, which is immediately picked up by some guy walking by. I feel like that's a very realistic thing. Like, his hand opens up, drops the drugs, and then he's there to just pick it up and go. You gotta love those amino acids, man. In the ambulance, Frank tries to save this poor gunshot victim while Noel leans over the guy's face and drips blood on him. Exactly how I want to go out.
Yeah.
The dying guy wants Frank to hold his hand, so he hands it to Noel instead of holding onto the hand. Here, hang onto the hand of this fucking insane lunatic who's got blood all over him. Just don't call an ambulance for me, guys, ever. Just jump in the car and take me yourselves.
Better off, yeah.
This guy dies feet from the hospital, and Noel again runs off into the night to splash blood on people during the height of the AIDS epidemic. No thought was given to that whatsoever. It was just like, this guy's just covered in blood. Next, we meet Soul Man Ving Rhames, who tells a young paramedic never to do mouth-to-mouth because you'll end up with a mouthful of junkie puke. This is great advice to a paramedic. Don't ever give mouth-to-mouth. It's never necessary. Then he says he's a true coxman and that he doesn't mix his seed with white women.
It's important in that previous scene, though. I think Frank says he's never done mouth to mouth to somebody except a baby.
Yeah, except a baby. Yeah, that's true.
In some part, which also was funny. Like, wait, you're a paramedic, you've never done mouth to mouth to anybody except a baby.
I mean, they have that pump, so that makes sense. Like, they pushed that thing directly into the lungs. The whole thing with Rose was like that it went in her stomach instead of in her lungs. And if he would have done mouth to mouth in that situation, he would have saved her life. But instead, he just kept trying to push that tube in there.
But that also is why people puke when you do mouth-to-mouth. If you do it incorrectly, you don't tilt their head back, you'll blow air into their stomach, which causes their stomach to expand, and then they throw it back up. So it's one of the things you learn doing CPR.
Anyways, all of these guys seem like gentlemen of the highest order, especially our newly met Marcus, Soul Man Ving Rhames. Frank runs into Mary yet again while Larry washes gallons of blood out of the ambulance. And she just doesn't really seem to mind. She's just kind of like, well, that's the thing. She tells him her father is now in a coma. Then her mom comes out and says that the man in the coma isn't her husband. Which was, I guess, maybe he just doesn't look the same anymore. They showed him. I get that. Yeah. I've seen, when somebody passes and you see them in a casket or something, it looks like a completely different person. Because if you believe in the soul and all that kind of stuff, or if you just believe that when all of the water isn't in your body anymore, your body's going to look a little different. Whichever.
And your muscles, all your muscles go slack, which changes your facial expression.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Then Frank escorts her into an ambulance covered in blood so they can give her a nice, comfy ride home. So like Larry just says fuck it, and he's like, I don't know, I'm not doing it anymore. Just leaves the blood all over the ambulance, and then Mary's mom immediately jumps in there. This woman who's clearly had some trauma. Sure, just jump in this bloody ambulance.
Say when she gets in, she's like offered it. She's like, "Would you like some coffee? Yeah. I've got some cake at home or something."
Yeah, that's not the pie.
Might actually be what Frank needs is
some food.
Oh, that would be that. Just imagine that scene in the movie. Lord, hold on, Mary's mom. I think you got the wrong idea. Larry drops Frank at home, where he explains that when things are going good on the job, it's the greatest feeling in the world, and that for a moment you are God when you save a life. All while having a drink shirtless and looking across a park, which is probably adjacent to the Vampire's Kiss therapist office. Somewhere there. It looks exactly the same. It's like the same fucking park.
Not the same thing. Somewhere out, Peter Lowe's out there wandering the streets, bloody.
Peter Lowe is dragging a stick somewhere. That'd be awesome. Don't I know you? We see Frank wake up so that he can head to his nightmare job, while monologuing about how when someone dies, you need to shift the blame to anyone but yourself, or else you'll go crazy. Which is probably what the hell's going on with him this whole time. He's just completely bearing the brunt of the stress, which is kind of mentioned in the end by Mary. But we'll get there. Frank meets with his captain, where we find out Frank has been late for work a ton and keeps calling out sick, and then tries to quit. But the captain says that he's never fired anyone in his life, which explains a lot about the events that have transpired so far and the events that are about to come, and why these people that he keeps getting partnered up with are the way that they are, because Captain refuses to fire anyone.
Yeah, Tom's not a
Then
HR
the
nightmare.
captain barks at him.
Yeah. What?
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
The captain barks at him. Yeah. He barks at him like a dog. Not like a big dog. Like a chihuahua or something.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that about? Like, what in the hell?
The only explanation that I can try to logically come up with is that they're just trying to show that, like, literally everybody who works this job is insane in some way or another. And the captain just, that's his coping mechanism, is he barks like a dog randomly, which doesn't faze Frank, so clearly he does it.
He's seen it a lot, I'm sure.
Normal.
Yeah. Frank's like, oh, okay.
it's like
introduce the character.
he's even like, I can bark too, you know. Like, I mean, is he is it supposed to be like he's barking at him like he's a captain, and so he's barking orders at the guy, and it was just so fucking weird. I didn't get it.
I forgot about that.
I'm imagining it was like a line read where it's like, the captain barks an order at Frank, and the guy just reads it and thinks it said, the captain barks. So he just goes,
We got it, move on.
God damn it. So strange. The barking captain tells Frank that Larry called out, so he's saddled with Coxman Ving Rhames, a.k.a. Marcus, for the night. Frank slams his fist into the captain's desk and tells him again to fire him before reluctantly heading out to be the one person who stands between the people of New York and certain death. Just the guy I want responsible for saving my life in a crisis.
I was really hoping this was going to be the beginning of Nick Cage being Nick Cage.
I did too. I really thought that this was like, this is the turning point. Okay, he's going to go crazier and crazier. That's why they picked Nick Cage for this role. But no, not really. I mean, he has moments.
It's like, So I think they have like this. I'm just now realizing it when we talk about it, but it's like everybody else that he works with has some way to cope with what the hell is going on with the job. They're all older than him. They've got, they're crazy in one way or another. He doesn't have that, which is clearly what's causing him to have this mental breakdown, I think.
Yeah, John Goodman's got Chinese food. Ving Rhames has Jesus. Tom Sizemore has beating the shit out of everybody.
Retirement plans. Like Larry wants to be a chief in some other smaller precinct or whatever. Tom Sizemore's got beaten up hobos and racing to gunshot victims. Like he's just completely embraced the chaos of it and loves it and revels in it. And then Ving Rhames Marcus has Jesus. And likes feeling like a preacher, as we'll find out.
Act 2. Let's get some motivation up in this thing.
Next, we meet a beatboxing Asian nun with a bloody aborted fetus doll around her neck, who drops a sick beat on the street while Marcus tells sunken-eyed, cracked-out-looking Frank that he doesn't look so great. Quick fact, the subtitles and the credits identify this woman as Sister Fetus. That's her name.
Sister Fetus.
She's
sounds like a Marilyn Manson album or something.
Right. Or sing it to the tune of Sister Christian. Frank says he's been seeing ghosts, and Marcus reassures him that only crazy people see ghosts, but he'll get used to it. Then the guy who won't have sex with white women because he doesn't want to mix his seed and refuses to do mouth-to-mouth even though he's a paramedic says Frank just needs to embrace Jesus. Suddenly, Queen Latifah pops on the radio, and Marcus does his best Barry White impression to make her jealous, and then starts singing instead of heading to help a guy who's dying from a cardiac arrest that the dispatcher's trying to send him to. Starting to see why Mr. Burke was dead too long to save.
They all seem to share this not real urgency to get to these calls. Like, I don't know if I want this one. I guess we'll do it. Not like time is of the essence,
Don't you dare answer that radio. They head to a nightclub full of extras from the Matrix movies where they meet I.B. Bangin'. There's a character in the movie named I.B. Bangin', and he looks like a goth Anakin Skywalker. He's apparently in a band when the rest of the group asks if he's okay, Marcus, a trained paramedic sent as the last hope for their dying friend lying on the floor, says, without examining the dude at all, that this dude is dead.
This dude is dead.
Frank explains that he's not dead after checking his pulse, like a paramedic should do. And then Marcus busts into a sermon for some damn reason to these coked out assholes who argue amongst themselves why their buddy OD'd on Red Death. Marcus Luther King Jr. does a holy sermon while Frank injects Narcan into I.B. Bangin's wrist.
That whole song is ludicrous. The whole sentence is fucking ludicrous.
He does. He says it like it's like a Southern Baptist sermon thing.
Yeah,
I was like, it's Marcus Luther King Jr.
Do I be
quick
banging
fact. Quick fact, when Frank and Marcus use Narcan on IB banging, Frank injects the Narcan into one of the wrist veins. Drugs are never mainlined without a patient IV because possible infiltration of the drug would cause tissue damage. If an IV can't be established, Narcan's given either intramuscularly or intranasally.
Thought that was a nice little fun fact of the guys who spent days with paramedics.
I didn't know that, and apparently neither did they.
Yeah.
IP Freely wakes up and thanks. IP Freely wakes up thanks to Marcus's song and dance, and the Matrix extras convert to Jesus or something. They just leave him. They're like, all right, he's back and fine. Don't need to take this OD to the hospital to get checked out. He'd probably go right back to doing drugs and then died again.
Give him a cup of soup or something.
Give some OJ.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Back at Horror Hospital, Frank asks the doctor what's happened to Mr. Burke, who tells him that he's showing signs of cognition, but he's had to be brought back to life 11 times since he arrived because his heart won't stabilize. Frank uses this as an excuse to head over to Mary's house and tell her the good news that her father is kind of not a vegetable anymore, but still probably going to die. Seriously. He's counted 11 times. They just keep shocking him back.
Yeah, the amount of times they bring this guy back is just ridiculous, because another time they're like, it's been 14 times tonight or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
just tonight.
Yeah. How could that possibly be healthy? Like, you're shocking the shit out of this guy.
His heart is going to die from that.
Yeah.
He lets her know the amazing news and then hits on her some more before taking her to the hospital to the sound of Martin Scorsese's mixtape blaring over the images of Mary banging her head on the wall of the ambulance. With a rough ride like this, it's a wonder why every person transported in the back of these ambulances doesn't die.
Her head just keeps slamming into that thing.
Yeah.
And then they're like kind of just smiling amongst each other.
It's a
laughing.
really long take
Real
of them
romantic.
just chilling in this.
Yeah. I was wondering
Probably
if
still blood everywhere.
I was wondering if that was something that was unintentional, them laughing together. 'Cause she just keeps banging her head, and then he starts smiling. She looks over, then she starts smiling.
I mean, they weren't married at the time.
Yeah.
It would make sense. I feel like in the behind the scenes, they said that they had never worked together before, had never actually acted in anything together. So it was probably cool for them at the time until they divorced 2 years later.
And you said, right, Nicolas Cage wanted her to be in Vampire's Kiss, right?
Yep. Yeah, he wanted her to play Rachel, which went to Mrs. Flashdance herself.
At the hospital, Mr. Burke shows more signs of life. He has a fit and starts trying to pull the tube out of his throat. So Frank uses the horrifying images of her father grasping at life to take her for a romantic dinner in the break room. I didn't get that. As I said, he's supposed to be brain dead, but he's awake. Like, he's waking up and trying to pull, and they mentioned he's done it before, like trying to pull the tube out. And it just seemed like that's more than just a reflex that somebody would be having if they were brain dead. Like, it's like they're trying to set up that he's recovering, like he's coming back to life. Is what I think they were trying to do with it. Like, against all odds, he's showing more than just signs of brain death. Like,
Well, as I
which I guess
sort of
becomes
mentioned,
more important toward the climax of the movie. But,
yeah, as I sort of mentioned, when the stethoscope was bouncing off his face, I just feel like the guy wasn't really able to like fully, embrace that. Like, I'm a corpse in this movie. He's just like the whole time he's kind of fully lucid in every moment.
I don't know if
every
it was
moment that he's on screen.
Yeah.
To me, it was like I like they're clearly he shouldn't be having. I don't know. It was a weird not juxtaposition. It was just maybe a continuity problem that like he's not as comatose as they keep saying he is, but they keep going out of their way to say what rough shape he's in.
Yeah, I have heard of this phenomenon before, where like patients will try and like pull that tube out without even knowing that they're doing it in their sleep and stuff. But it's more of kind of like you're just kind of pushing it out of your face. Kind of like if you were sleeping and like somebody was like, you had something like tickling your neck, you would probably push it out of the way. It's just kind of like a reflex.
During a scene featuring several baffling fade cuts back and forth that only focus on Mary, she tells Frank that Noelle lived at her house for almost a year at one point, and they reminisce about how great the clearly god-awful neighborhood is that they grew up in. I don't know if you guys saw that too, but there's these weird fades.
Yeah.
And while Frank was talking, like she wasn't even talking, it just faded back and forth like 4 times on her. I've never seen it in any movie before, and I don't know what the purpose of it was.
I had a really hard time trying to figure out what was the intent of those fades, because usually there's an intent behind crossfades like that.
Right.
Like, I have no idea. I really don't.
It doesn't show up anywhere else. It's just. It doesn't seem like it was pertinent to what they were talking about. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Frank says he's been on the job for 5 years and is divorced. Mary says she used to be a junkie. The kind of usual getting to know you chit chat over break room pizza. Frank says people tend to open up to him because his mother always said, "I look like a priest."
My mother always said, "I look like a priest."
You do.
You do. That was a weird exchange of like, he does?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, maybe they saw Face Off.
I was going to say, clearly she saw Face Off.
Mary confides that her mom thought she was going to be a nun since she ran away to a convent once, but it turns out she just doesn't like being held down in one place. As you do. I don't know why you'd run to a convent if you wanted to break free of the world, but
it's an escape, I guess.
It was like
kind of like going into the army or something. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Back in the ambulance, Marcus scolds Frank for getting involved with the patient's daughter, which causes Nick Cage to speak jive back to him.
What about rule number 3? Don't get involved with dispatchers named Love. Now, boy, you don't know nothing about rule number 3.
It's one of the few like Nick Cage moments.
Yeah.
They just peppered in.
What about rule number 3?
Marcus, uber Christian that he is, suggests they go look at some hookers, and then rolls past them holding up a wad of money while Frank continues to break down from the unending nightmare that is his reality. He explains that his training is only useful in 10% of the calls, and that he's mostly there as a grief mop, and realizes now that his job is less about saving lives and more about bearing witness to people's dying moments, which I think was linking to the priest thing. Like priests deliver absolution, last rites and stuff. They're just sort of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again was, I think, the juxtaposition of like paramedics are supposed to save lives, but he views himself now as just like the guy who's there while they die.
Yeah.
And that's his main purpose in life.
I mean, it makes sense that like only 10% of their training is, even used whatsoever on the calls, and most of the time they're just kind of like, it's already too late.
That's something else I remember from CPR class when they taught CPR. They were like, this probably won't work, but you don't get discouraged. But yeah, even paramedics don't ever revive a lot of people with CPR. So it's less about like bringing them back to life and more about just keeping blood circulating till they can get to a doctor who can then hook them up to machines and do more.
One little fun fact that I learned not super long ago that I felt like they did really well in this movie is that once there is no heartbeat anymore, doing the shockers doesn't do anything. Like it.
Nope. Yeah,
it's
they're
pointless.
Called defibrillators. Yeah, because fibrillation is when your heart erratically beats out of sync, and that's all that those defibrillators do is they defibrillate and they shock it and reset it back to the thump 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 that a heart's supposed to do. So that's why a lot of times people have heart attacks. They don't like pass out or whatever. Their heart's just beating, irrhythmically and stuff, which they're still conscious for. It just doesn't pump blood properly, which is why it hurts and all that shit. And
once
you flatline, that's one of those.
They can't bring you back.
Flatline, they can maybe give you a spike of adrenaline to kickstart your heart back up, but it usually doesn't work. I don't know why that is such a prevailing myth that's been in movies for decades now and has never really been addressed. It's like you still see it. I don't know. It's just one of those things, like the visualness of like clear and then like shocking the person back to life. I don't know. It's one of those pet peeves that every time a movie does it now, I just hate it because it's just so it's just not real.
I feel like it comes
even
from
in a movie about paramedics.
I think it comes from a lot of people who write movies only know medical things through movies and watching TV shows and stuff. So they think, oh, well, they must have done their research. So.
But you think now at this point, like nobody says it's not something that's done. There's people that do continuity. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a trope.
Maybe it's the rule of cool. You know, it looks cool, so they do it.
Yeah.
There's even in frickin' King Kong versus Godzilla. Like,
oh, spoilers, dude.
Not that King Kong vs. Godzilla is some pinnacle of filmmaking, but
I think they differ. Shut your whore
mouth. He sees another vision of Rose on the street that asks him why he killed her, and then answers to her out loud, prompting Marcus to notice that Frank's a little on edge, talking to himself. Rather than suggest the guy responsible, rather than suggest the guy responsible for saving people who is seeing ghosts and hearing voices take the night off, Marcus asks what the voices are saying, and Frank says,
They say kill Marcus, okay?
So he's hearing voices that are now telling him to kill it. And Marcus doesn't think anything of it. They get a call about another cardiac arrest, and Frank flips out because every call seems to be someone dying rather than something a little less horrible. Meanwhile, 70s music blares in the background. They arrive at a crack house, which... this is what I didn't get. Like, they arrive at a crack house where Marcus is shocked to see a fat crackhead. Turns out she's pregnant and about to give birth, which doesn't seem like cardiac arrest at all, so I don't know why they sent them there, why the cardiac arrest thing happened.
Well, the guy didn't know that it was a pregnancy.
Oh, that's right.
Because they were both virgins, and so he was like, she's having a heart attack or something. I'm sure it was the call.
Yeah.
The guy she's with explains they're both virgins, so she can't be pregnant, and doesn't believe she is until some bloody feet pop out of her vagina. I love that. She's having a baby, and he's like, I can't, it's not possible. It's not possible. It's possible. It's possible.
See, look at the feet.
See those feet?
Turns out this lady's having twins. Marcus delivers the boy, who is fine, but Frank delivers the girl, who isn't breathing. They rush her to the hospital, where Nick Cage kisses her over and over again like a pervert. He gives it mouth to mouth for a minute, but sadly the baby doesn't make it. This causes Frank to spiral a bit further down into insanity as he once again loses a patient. Meanwhile, Marcus is elated that they just saved a little baby boy.
Hey, what's worse than 10 dead babies in a tree? One dead baby in 10 trees.
Oh my God.
What's the difference between a dead baby and a Mars bar? About 20 calories.
Back in the ambulance, Marcus and Frank decide to knock back a few, but when a call comes in, Frank begs Marcus not to take it. Marcus guns it and flips the ambulance, which means Marcus is either a terrible driver or a lightweight because he's had a small amount of alcohol in a hospital cup like 20 seconds before flipping the van over a car.
They hadn't been drinking at all up to that point.
No, they made it seem like they were just completely hammered and partying, but they really just started.
Well, let's go, and then flips the freaking ambulance. I don't know if you've seen those little ambulance cups, but they're like this big. They hold no liquid whatsoever.
I know.
It's like one of those little coffee cups.
I thought it was going to be a delusion. Like this is some mental thing he was, and then it would cut back to them driving towards the next. But nope, he flipped that fucking van.
It actually happened, and it's like never addressed in the rest of the movie again.
Both of them just fine.
I thought it was gonna be like, oh shit, the whole movie just flipped. You know, they're gonna be horribly injured in this thing, and then like, nah, it just they didn't know how to end the scene, so they flipped the ambulance over and moved on.
Yeah. It just felt so kind of pointless in the grand scheme of things. It's just like, we got to add something in here to make it a little bit more, keep people on edge, and then. Right. Yeah, and then Marcus disappears and we don't see him again for the rest of the movie, if I remember right. Same as Larry, who after the first act, we don't see him again.
We see Larry once more, only in
a flashback.
But other than that, he doesn't return. Yeah.
Frank climbs out of the destroyed ambulance laughing like a nutcase, tells Marcus he quits, and just walks off bleeding into the night.
Hey, he and Noel have something in common.
Yeah.
Frank heads to the hospital to quit when he runs into Noel and Mary. Mary apparently let Noel go, which prompts Gris to come outside to thank her, because otherwise he would have killed him. You and me both, Gris. You and me both. Frank creepily follows Mary and is hilariously disgusted by some school children along the way. I think we can all identify.
Did you guys see that? He was just like,
I didn't catch it.
Yeah. He's just like walking through them and like, disgusting. That might be my favorite Cage moment of the whole movie, and I don't think it was scripted whatsoever. He's just kind of disgusted by children.
Maybe it's like he never sees them because he's always out at night doing things. And, maybe it was like, because they were all a bunch of teenage girls, right? So maybe he saw Rose again, and we didn't actually see Rose through his eyes this time.
True. Maybe. I don't know. It was really funny.
Mary freaks out about waiting for hours for news about her dad and listening to Noel screaming. So she does what we would all do when we're feeling a little frazzled, heads into a nearby building to do some crack. Again, I think we can identify. Frank follows her in and quickly makes friends with her drug dealer, Cy Coates, who turns out is a pretty chill guy. He's a pretty cool character. I kept expecting him to be like some horrible guy, but he's like just like one of the nicest guys in the movie.
Yeah, he really is.
He may or may not have shot. He may or may not have shot Noel in the head, causing him to be the lunatic that he is now.
Oh, right. That was
that is mentioned at one point.
Yeah, but again, it's Noel, so
he wasn't so chill back then.
He's relaxed.
In the narrative of this movie, he's pretty cool. Like in the events that we see in this, whatever he did years prior, whatever. He introduces Frank to his buddy Tiger, who's a fat guy with a bloody nose. This Tiger is presumably the same Tiger who shot and killed Frank's patient the previous night. Because they talk about how he's trying to stop Red Death from getting dealt along the streets. Mm-hmm. They chat about Frank's job and pass around a joint while Frank cries to himself. And then Cy gives Frank a pill to help him sleep for a couple hours. As you do.
Yeah.
Frank pops the pill and nods off to an insane dream filled with some terrible racist surf music, a guy with no legs crawling across the sidewalk, Frank pulling the ghosts of people he has saved out of a cobblestone street, and some more goddamn 70s music blaring in the background. Next, we see a crazy sequence where everything plays in reverse, except for Frank's ambulance and people who were filmed walking backwards, but reversed, so it's extra creepy.
I actually really thought this was a cool sequence. Sorry, I totally blocked you off, but I thought this was like probably the coolest like filmmaking kind of like experiment in the whole movie. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it looked awesome. Mm-hmm. Snow falls up in a pretty cool visual effect, and there are hanging slabs of meat all around for some reason. Because it was cool, because nowadays they'd just CG it so that the snow was falling up, and they would just film it, whatever, but they had to do it all in reverse.
I love like
this creepy factor.
Especially Rose's movements, it just makes it so spooky, like the way that she's like, I don't know, just her weird walk was unsettling. Which, you would expect from a weird drug-induced dream,
Yeah. We see what really went down with Rose. It turns out she had an asthma attack, and Frank accidentally put the air tube into her stomach instead of her lungs. Before we can see how her story ended, Frank's dream is shattered by Frank, back in the drug den, screaming his ever-loving head off. He pounds on his legs and, in more of a handicapped kid looking for a snack type of scream, heads down the hallway, grabs Mary, and carries her out of the building.
Frank, where are you going? You're making a mistake. Yeah, you go.
It was so like that was not what Martin Scorsese told Nick Cage to do. Like as he's going down the hallway, like, it was so good.
And as he's leaving, Si's like, "Hey, you owe me $10."
Yeah.
But in like a cool way, not like a come back here or I'll shoot you in the knees.
Yeah.
Give me like $10 way. Just say
$10.
whenever you can get it to me, just get me those $10.
When your check comes in, Frank, hit me up.
Mary comes to outside and gets tangled up with Nick Cage's stethoscope for way longer than if it was intentional. They stumble out of the building, and Mary tells Frank about how Noel was her brother's best friend, but became this charming self after being shot in the head by either Cy, the chill drug dealer, or Tiger, the fat guy with a bloody nose. Back at Mary's place, Frank invites himself in, saunters behind her up the stairs, and she asks what we're all thinking.
You want to fuck me? Everyone else does.
I love that line so much, man.
That's what you want to hear your wife say to you.
You want to fuck me? Everybody else has. That's fucking gold writing right there.
Yeah.
In Mary's place, Frank passes out on the couch and then washes his face over and over with Mary's decorative soaps. Frank explains that he's turned a corner and decides to head back to work. I guess all he needed was a nice drug-induced nightmare nap. Well, that's one of his things. Like, he just needs sleep. That's he's mentioned it throughout the movie. He can't sleep anymore.
He does say that when he passed out in her place, that it was the best sleep that he'd had in years. So I feel like just between the nightmare nap and his sleeping at Mary's place, he kind of finally got the rest that he wanted or that he needed to actually get back on the job. But it is immediately like back to his bad, horrible nightmare world. Like as soon as he shows back up for work, so
it doesn't last very long.
It doesn't last long at all.
Yeah.
But it's enough to get him to go back to work, I guess, instead of quitting.
Well, yeah, he gets to hang out with Tom Sizemore now.
Yeah. Such a fun guy.
Who wouldn't want to do that?
Act 3. Time to resolve some shit.
Frank gets teamed up with Psycho Tom for the night, but decides to take a quick pit stop before heading out. He heads over to have a nice little schizophrenic chat with Mr. Burke. His comatose body explains that he's had enough and not to let him live. Frank then heads down to the ambulance where he gives himself some oxygen and a fun little cocktail mix in an IV bag to get himself going for the night, which really makes me think he's turned the corner. And wouldn't you know it? 70s music blares in the background.
I didn't get what his coping mechanism is now just going to be a drug cocktail or something.
I guess.
I don't know. He had his mind opened at Cy's place, and now he's like wants more of that sweet release.
It's funny because he's like, I turned a corner. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going back to work. And then he shows up and has a schizophrenic chat with a comatose patient and then immediately goes into the ambulance and fucking drugs himself up so that he can...
I'm sick, Tom.
He can get himself going.
And Tom doesn't even blink.
Tom's like, oh, okay. Hey, fix me up one of those when you're done. They arrive at their first call, a tunnel filled with junkies walking around like zombies and a pretty white horse.
What the hell was with that goddamn horse? What the fuck,
That's one of my Coppola questions.
I had the same question. I mean, I think that it was supposed to signify something, but what, like... Just think of the logistics of getting that horse for that scene. Like, what the fuck? Why was...
Like, it's like the chief barking like a dog in levels of inexplicability, but so much more elaborate and complicated to do for a gag. I don't understand what the point of it was.
Symbolism of some sort.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it's not like this is Blade Runner and it's the unicorn or something. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to symbolize?
Maybe that horse was already there.
Yeah, like
maybe
white
it
horse
was.
is usually like hope or freedom, that kind of stuff. And like his hope or freedom from his life is to go be a hobo in a tunnel. I don't understand. Go live with the Morlocks. Like that's his way out.
God damn it, Nigel. Grab people, grab people.
These are the things that I thought when I saw it. It's just like, I know, I was like, they're not even going to make a joke about like there's a fucking horse there or something. Like that would also fit in the movie if they were just like, maybe there's a fucking horse over here.
Yeah, see that? Yeah, that's something Tom would say.
Where'd they get a fucking horse?
Yeah, nope,
If
never
Ving Rhames
mentioned.
was there, he would be like, how much to fuck the horse?
It's against Jesus, but whatever. I'm off duty.
All right, so the homeless people explain that their friend tried to kill himself. The whole time, Frank is occupied asking these guys, who live in a tunnel that probably reeks of shit and crack, whether they have any coffee. Coffee?
You guys got any coffee?
Got any coffee? I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I'd want to drink coffee from a fucking crack den.
Hobo coffee.
Hobo coffee. The name of our band.
It's probably no more disgusting than the coffee at that frickin' nightmare hospital that they have to go in and out of.
Is it touche? You make a good point. Tom shows some compassion for once and tries to convince the guy that wearing a patch on his head will cure him from wanting to kill himself. Frank, on the other hand, says that this guy's suicide attempt is the worst he's ever seen and tells him the proper way to kill yourself. Then offers the dude a knife so he can finish the job. So, yeah, I think Frank's all better now.
Yeah. He's good.
I mean, he kind of is. Like, if we go with the theory that he needs a coping mechanism, like everybody else has.
Assisted suicide?
His coping mechanism is just telling people that they need to kill themselves.
Holy fuck, I think you hit it
I
on the
don't give
head.
a fuck anymore.
It's like he's embraced the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
He's becoming the Grim Reaper.
That's what the white horse is about. Death has arrived.
Pale white horse.
Pale white horse.
Yeah.
There you go. We cracked the code, guys. The homeless guy admits that he doesn't actually want to die, and Frank tells him he makes him sick as Tom laughs hysterically. Just such a fucked up scene.
Oh, it's so bad. Bad as in awful, not bad as in badly done. Just real shit you wouldn't want to hear from a paramedic, you know?
Character reversal too, because Frank or Tom is the one being all compassionate and trying to like give this guy, okay, let's try and stop this guy from killing himself for a couple of nights by making him feel like a low placebo effect or something. Frank's like, just fucking kill yourself, and then Tom's like,
not across, down.
Maybe Scorsese on the night was just like, fuck it, do the roles in reverse. Let's just have Tom play Frank and Frank play Tom, just for this one scene.
Just for this one scene.
I'm bored.
Internet weirdos will be confused about it 20 years from now on the internet.
They finally grab some coffee, but the Java doesn't work its magic as we see Frank giving us his best 1,000-yard stare while seeing Rose's ghost on the street again. They head back out into the night, and Frank drives like a cracked-out Dale Earnhardt to the sounds of, you guessed it, 70s music blaring in the background. Tom begins to think maybe there's something wrong with Frank, but quickly dismisses his fears when Frank says he's never felt better despite looking like a Holocaust victim who hasn't slept in weeks. A call comes in on the radio for their ambulance, which is 66 X-ray, and Frank answers with a sultry and seductive,
X. First of all,
I can't do it justice. I can't do it justice. It is so good.
I will say here that I really enjoyed the visual degradation of Frank as the movie went along.
Yeah.
Like, throughout the 3 nights, he gets more and more gaunt. His stubble actually grows out, if you notice that. He's clean shaven the first night. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow the second night, and he's got even more of it on the third night, while his eyes get more and more sunken and gaunt, like, you know, as you'd expect somebody who probably hasn't eaten or drank anything in 3 days and just did a drug bender.
And at this point in the film, like, Scorseseisms start to play in. So, like, you start to see when it's from Frank's perspective, everything around him starting to kind of blur on the edges. And then, like, back, I forgot to mention this, but back when they're walking into the hobo camp, there's a lot of X's. There's a lot of structures with X's, which is something Scorsese loves to throw in when he's talking about death. Yeah, pretty much like the death of a character or death following that character. I mean, it was all over The Departed and a couple of his other films. You'll see he has X's that kind of then transition into like a death scene or like death being present in character's life.
Yeah. I wonder if that's why this is called the 66 X-ray ambulance.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. They head to help a suicidal jumper who is conveniently being lit by a couple of Hasidic Jews with a spotlight, which I'm assuming every neighborhood in New York comes with a pair. Thankfully, the beatboxing nun is dropping science nearby, so I'm sure everything will be all right.
What the fuck? It felt like a scene out of like Airplane or something. It really did. The cops mentioned like they paid the Jews to hold the spotlight or something.
And then you got Sister Fetus over there dropping some beats.
Yeah. Sister Fetus.
I think that's where it actually calls her Sister Fetus in the subtitle.
Really?
I didn't see it earlier in the movie, but there's a couple of parts where it's like Sister Fetus, and then like it specifically says Sister Fetus is the one talking.
That's awesome. It turns out that this is the drug den Frank was in earlier, and things are decidedly less chill. Cy, the drug dealer's girl, is dead in the hall with a bullet in her head. Inside, the place is ransacked. Tiger, the fat guy with the bloody nose, jumped out of a window to a lower apartment, breaking both legs before jumping through a window and passing out. Cy, on the other hand, got impaled on the deck's railing during his attempt to flee, and despite having this iron rod sticking through him, Cy is still pretty chill.
Yeah. Pretty damn chill.
Sounds some good stuff.
Whatever Cy's on, that's what I want, man.
Yeah, nothing phases the guy.
So relaxed.
So relaxed. Frank tells Cy he hasn't damaged anything major, but that they have to cut him off the railing with a blowtorch as the crowd on the street screams for the cops to let him fall. Because that's what you want to hear as you're dangling 30 stories above the fucking street.
I get the feeling that this guy who runs a crack den is not well liked in the neighborhood.
No, the cops are trying to kill him. The crowd is trying to kill him.
He's their Nino Brown for this movie from New Jack City.
Yeah. Not sure if Tom was the one holding him. He would have just... They have a good talk while Frank caresses Cy's head lovingly. They watch the sparks fly, and Cy professes his love for the city that has been painted as a horrific nightmare with every scene thus far. Cy nearly falls as the railing comes loose, but thankfully our hero, Frank, saves him. I do have to say, that was actually a pretty beautiful moment when he's talking about his love for the city and the fireworks are going off and you see
red, white, and blue fireworks.
Yeah, red, white, and blue, and then I think is it the Empire State Building in the background that's lit up with red, white, and blue?
One of those. Yeah. I don't. It seemed a little overt on Scorsese's part.
Yeah, but it's a nice. Well, I don't know. He always likes to fix in on icons of cities, like certain icons, but I guess in this film, it's the only time he really touches base about the actual architecture in the city. Everything else is just hobos and underpasses and crack dens and all that shit.
Yeah.
So it's nice
the
to kind of see
the shitty part of New York. I was just going to say it's sort of the same thing that they were talking about in Vampire's Kiss, where like if everything's going well, New York's amazing, but when it's not, it's the worst place in the world.
Yeah.
Which obviously every moment of this movie, it's the worst place in the world.
Yeah. It was a nice break from that chaos that had been painted throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
They take him to the hospital where he thanks Frank for saving his life and tells him, don't worry about that $10.
Yeah, it's pretty chill.
Yeah, it's pretty chill. Frank then heads over to Mr. Burke for another schizophrenic chat. Mr. Burke again tells him to just let him die. Frank has a good chuckle when the doctors tell him they had to shock this guy back to life 14 times that night. How many fingers have I? 14 times. And he's like,
what are you going to attach a defibrillator to him, send it home with him?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, we might have to do how a pacemaker works.
Yeah, pretty much
to a paramedic that would presumably know how a pacemaker works. But
yeah. Well, I mean, this man's losing his mind, so
I guess
the medical facts are just gone. Frank heads out and has a smoke with Mary, where she tells him that she was weak and won't do drugs again. Pinky promises him. He tries to cheer her up by quietly staring at her for a long time before saying, "We're all dying, Mary Burke." He strokes her face in a super creepy manner and kisses her on the temple, then heads off back into the night.
That was so weird. I mean, I guess it was just like, oh, we've been through a thing, so now I can just grope you and kiss you on the side of the face.
Yeah, it was
that whole drug thing we went through.
Creepy. Yeah, it was a very creepy moment. He and Tom get a call, and
but
Frank
I think it was supposed to not be creepy.
Yeah, it was supposed to. It was supposed to be like romantic, and like you said, they're sharing a moment because they've been through this tragedy together, and then it just comes off as creepy.
Really creepy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He and Tom get a call, and Frank chugs whiskey before seeing Rose's ghost in every person he sees on the street as 70s music blares in the background. Frank is freaking out now and says he wants to break some windows while Tom throws some racial slurs at a cab driver, you know, just to add more fun to this wacky night. I felt like that was very accurate. Of all the things in this movie, that I 100% believe an ambulance driver leaning out his window and just hurling racial slurs at a cabbie. Especially in the 90s.
Again, that was probably just Tom Sizemore. He probably wasn't even scripted.
Martin's like, you can't harass the extras like that, Tom. You told me to be me.
They didn't just say the first thing that popped into my head.
They spot Crazy Noel on the street again. He's smashing windows. What a crazy... Hold on, let me... Hold on. He's smashing windows.
What a crazy night.
He's smashing windows. What a crazy coincidence. Of cars for the fun of it. So Tom decides they should beat the shit out of him, which makes total sense to me. Frank decides to go along with it and even ends up busting out a window with Noel, his old pal, looking on like a proud papa. Noel spots Tom and takes off. Frank reluctantly gives chase while coming to his senses. Inside the building is a homeless den full of people sleeping and sobbing, the usual sights and sounds of New York City. I love when he like walks in and he looks over and there's just some eyes staring out from fucking trash bags.
It was a real the movie does it a couple of times, but it was a real like descent into hell trope where he goes down out of the light. There's like he even as he's walking down, he's well lit from a street light above him, a glow, and he goes down into this darkness. So there's just
darkness,
the horrible shit going on.
Yeah. Frank sees Rose's ghost yet again and explains to her that he wanted to help her, but is awoken from his vision by the sounds of Tom beating the living shit out of Noel with a bat. Frank pushes Tom off of him, then tries to save his life since his incredible partner pretty much bashed the dude's head in. Frank decides saving Noel's life is worth the potential junkie puke that might fill his mouth from giving Noel mouth-to-mouth. After a short, sensual session of mouth-to-mouth, Frank is able to revive Noel. They rush him to the hospital to ensure his life will be saved.
Thus completing the character arc. He can now do CPR or mouth-to-mouth on an adult.
Yeah. Character development never stops for Frank. After securing Noel, Frank heads upstairs to check on Old Man Burke, who is now in the ICU. Fun fact, the ICU is surprisingly staffed by Carla from Scrubs, in a role that's slightly less zany and amusing than her romp as a sitcom nurse a couple years later.
Yeah.
I did a double take and then had to look it up. What? The nurse from Scrubs.
Yeah, I popped up the menu on Amazon and to see if it was her, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess she has a type. She gets typecast.
Yep.
Frank hears.
I saw
Mr.
you in that
Burke's
Bringing
voice.
Out the Dead movie. I was the one person who saw that. Let's put you in this.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, you and Cliff Curtis is great.
Did they pay you? No, just in the Scrubs. Well, do I have an offer for you? Frank hears Mr. Burke's voice, and it again tells him to kill him. So Frank, with sensors already on his chest for some reason, switches Mr. Burke's wires and air hose over to him so that they read his vitals instead, giving Mr. Burke time to die without alerting any of the nurses. What the fuck? They just that's just
a little
acceptable.
premeditated murder.
Yeah, because he had him on him already. He had the markers on him, so he was going down there with the intent to do that.
Yeah,
but it's just weird. They go from him saving Noel to now all of a sudden going, and he's like already got this shit on him. I don't know. It was just a little bit of a
he knows that the soul doesn't want to go back into the body, so he just
torturing him.
lets him go.
He's tortured by the people that he can't save, and he's tortured by the one guy that he did save.
He did
shouldn't have saved. Mm-hmm. You know, it's one of the things, the problems I have with the movie. It's just it kind of muddles it by having both.
It does. Although, like we learned that he's okay with murder now, or assisted suicide, we can call it.
Yeah, I have a working theory that I'll get talked about later, but
awesome.
That I've just kind of come up with as we've talked about this. So
nice,
man.
Once Mr. Burke is dead, Frank hooks the wires back up to him and pretends to do CPR. Finally, old man Burke gets the death that Frank imagined he would have wanted in his drug, alcohol, and sleep-deprived induced psychosis, leaving Frank feeling like he did something good for someone. Nothing like a little premeditated murder to put giddy up back in your step. Outside, Tom smashes out the lights on his own ambulance while screaming at it to die, 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 son of a bitch, die, die, die. Frank then heads over to Mary's place to tell her the good news.
Earlier in the movie, when he meets up with Tom mentions the ambulance is like whatever. He's been with this ambulance for years and he hasn't managed to kill her, even though he's tried. So I guess he's trying to finally kill the ambulance for some reason.
Well, he couldn't kill Noel. So he's got to kill something.
I was wondering if maybe this was like him kind of coming to his senses of like, God, I almost killed somebody, and then him trying to like maybe knock himself out of the game for the next night or something. So it's maybe Tom developing as a character like, oh shit, I could have actually killed that guy.
Right.
It's been enough to this point to beat the shit out of people, but I almost killed someone. Oh my God.
Or as I like to interpret,
until they almost die.
Or as I like to interpret, they were originally shooting Nick leaving the hospital, and Tom was just out there having a good old time on his own time.
Man, Ving got the flip one. Ving got to crash one of them, and I don't get to do anything. Smash this one with that baseball bat.
Back to Mary. She's not super surprised, but then transforms into Rose's ghost, which marks, I think, 75 times that's happened in this movie. Rose's ghost tells him, it's not your fault. No one asked you to suffer. That was your idea. This conversation gives Frank the closure that we, Star Wars fans, were never given with our Rose ghost. 100%. That's only in there for you, Nigel. I tried so hard I shoehorned that in just for you. It's the worst joke ever, but if it made you laugh, it's a win. When she switches back to being Mary, Frank tells her that Noel was injured, but he'll be okay thanks to him. She asks him to come in, and he falls asleep in her arms before being lit up like an angel. A poignant moment that would have only been made better if it was punctuated by some blaring 70s music off in the distance. The end.
Do you think the whole time that he was having that like weird interaction with Rose's ghost, he was actually talking to Mary, and Mary's like, "What the fuck is going on?"
I thought so, but then I thought she let him into the apartment because we've seen earlier when he talks to Rose, Marcus hears him and is like, "What?" Yeah. So it's like he's obviously talking to himself.
Yeah,
but you know, she lets him in anyway because why not?
Why not?
I mean, you know.
I mean, everybody else
some
has
cigarettes and some drugs.
Presumably he went there to tell her her dad just died. So
yeah, that's what he was there for.
To just invite him in.
Yeah,
come on in.
Why wouldn't you?
You want to fuck me? Everybody else has.
We have a Coppola questions before we move on.
Coppola question. Coppola.
That's one of the questions we have. Is it
Coppola questions? Coppola. A couple of questions here. Whose blood is Noel covered in that scene? Because it doesn't seem to be his, really. Like,
I thought
he's
it was
not
his because he
injured
was
in
like
any
slashing
way.
himself up.
Oh, okay.
Like he was cutting himself, I think they said, and he was suicidal. Yeah. It looked like he'd slashed his neck or something.
With the bottle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, because he had the bottle up against his throat, and I think he probably just cut himself and then was smearing it all over.
I mean, it's in his hair. It's all over his body. It's just everywhere. So he's just
it's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of blood, which I was thinking the same thing. Is it his? Did he kill somebody? Like, they just never address it.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he is pretty freaking unhinged. And like they said, he held some priests captive with a screwdriver at one point. So... I mean, it could be somebody else's blood. I'm just saying. Yeah. Maybe one of those missing persons reports should be linked back to Noel.
I think a lot could.
Noel was played by Mark Anthony, who I think was a singer.
Yeah, Mark Anthony.
I forgot Mark Anthony. Yeah, I forgot Mark Anthony existed.
He had a
really
run
good
on
job at changing his look up.
Some sitcom, right? He had like a starring role for a while, like an ER or something like that. Am I imagining that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
He kind of had a doctor role at one point, I feel like.
I thought he did a pretty good job playing Noel.
Yeah, I mean, he annoyed me, and I think that's what they were going for.
Yep.
What was with the white horse? Like, what?
Yeah, that's one of my other.
I guess we kind of answered it. Maybe it's to signify like death has arrived. Maybe that's.
So I feel like the working theory that I was working on as we come up with this is that his coping mechanism is now he sort of sees himself as an angel of death, rather than like a god saving people. And that's his transition throughout the movie is like coming to, because he says at the beginning he can always starts to feel like he can tell when the dying person doesn't want to be revived or whatever. I don't know if the horse is supposed to be a representation of that or if it's a literal horse, but it feels like that's his, like he can finally sleep at the end because he goes and kills Mr. Burke. He's finally accepted that he's an angel of death and not a person whose job is to save people, I guess. Because he tortures himself over the people that he can't save because he still wants to save people. But it's like he learns to take comfort in the people he lets die instead of worrying about saving everybody or something. Which the only thing that seems kind of at odds with that is when he saves Cy, because it's sort of like another cathartic moment. Like he finally got to save a person, which we haven't seen him do.
I feel like he kind of saved a few people in a row.
Somebody.
Yeah, but in his mind, he was saving him, and that's. There's a double-edged, like, I feel like Scorsese was trying to make the point that, like, no, he actually saved this guy from this torturous, being brought back to life over and over and over again. But at the same time, he murdered a guy. It's premeditated. Yeah. He had the sensors already on him before he arrived at the hospital. Yeah. He meant to kill this guy from way back when. Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be a gray area, and that's we find out. Like that's what's really been eating at him for the last couple of nights. Is like he let this guy live, and he apparently has been telling him he doesn't want to live because he's going psycho. That was one of my questions: is he actually hearing? Can he actually hear dead people, or is he just going psycho?
I mean,
they don't make it clear one way or the other. So he could be that he very well is actually hearing and seeing ghosts.
They say that it's a supernatural drama when you look up the kind of synopsis of the movie and stuff. So maybe I don't know.
Yeah, it's even listed as horror. It's listed as horror on Amazon. Yeah, they have it tagged as a horror movie.
Yeah, I did see that. Which
that doesn't make sense.
Horror.
No,
I don't know. So it's like maybe it's probably just left intentionally vague. If you want to imagine he's actually hearing dead people, like
I mean,
maybe that's.
I thought it was his psychosis, his mental collapse. He starts hearing voices and stuff. He's seeing ghosts. He's hearing voices, and now he's like he's imposing what he would feel like as Mr. Burke. So I think it's his own consciousness, like speaking back to him through this person who probably is completely unaware of what's going on whatsoever, and is just in a coma. But yeah.
Probably. But I mean, to the point when somebody actually has a psychosis, they can't distinguish the reality from the fantasy. So to him, he very well does hear ghosts and sees dead people. Yeah.
I got the sense that the three guys that Frank was partnered up with kind of represented him in a way, like kind of they were mirrors, like representing his decline in a different way. I don't know if you guys got that sense or if I'm over kind of thinking it. Or if they represent something else. Yeah.
I can see like different stages of his his decline, because John Goodman, Larry's a good guy who wants to do well, wants to do more. He's got his goals. Then you have Marcus, who is a little crazy, but also lives for the thrill of truly saving people. Then you have Tom, who's just a fucking nut job, and that's where after he spends the night with Tom, he goes up and kills Mr. Burke.
Yeah, that's his final catharsis. Yeah, they are all sort of reflections, because also Larry is sort of apathetic about stuff, which like Frank's not. He is, but he isn't. Like he acts like he is, but obviously he does care about stuff. So there's that reflection of it. And like you said with Marcus, he loves saving people. Like he gets them all jazzed up, and has the God complex as well, which we know Frank also sort of has when he does that monologue saying that when you save somebody, you are God. Basically. And I think he learns throughout the quarter, like, well, not only are you saving somebody, but if you kill somebody, you're also kind of God. There's power in that too, I guess, in some weird, sick way. And that brings him comfort.
Maybe it's kind of like they're three different parts of him, kind of like when you put them all together, you kind of have Frank. All put together.
Yeah, because Tom is just the unhinged psycho part.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of like the three ghosts that visit Scrooge, right?
But then, Frank kind of embraces some of that chaos, like smashes the window with Noel and stuff instead of, whatever. And obviously, he's not going to go as far as to bash someone's head in, but he does tell the guy to kill himself because he makes him sick because he couldn't, which does seem like something Tom would do. So it's like he's all exercising his demons with each one of the three guys that he works with and gets paired up with. Yeah. My only other question I had was, did anybody else think that the ICU looked like more like a morgue?
Yeah, it did.
The ICU in the hospital was just like a dark brick-laden room.
Yeah.
I've been in and around ICUs at other hospitals, and they're not well lit and cheerful places, but they tend to not be like in the sub basement of a hospital.
They have a lot of tech. They have a lot of tech in there, and they're more of a hospital feel. I mean, because that's where you're going when you're in bad shape, obviously.
Right. And they're constantly they're staffed by more than just like one person in a room.
Yes.
Like they have, because they need to have people on call to get there within seconds to stabilize somebody.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was probably intentional by Scorsese.
That's what I thought.
Make it feel like that, but I didn't notice that till you brought it up. But now, yeah. Definitely.
Well, this whole hospital just seems like like a hellish parody of a hospital. Like the waiting room is like hell. You know, there's like a cacophony of the damned screaming at everywhere you go and stuff, and they're all apathetic and whatnot. It's like a perverted inverse of what you would associate with a hospital. So it would make sense that the ICU, where you put your most vulnerable people, is basically just some morgue where you're just putting them there to die. So
that's a good point.
Maybe there's like a Dante's Inferno type of overarching theme that Scorsese was going for there, where it's like
could be
the 7 layers of hell.
It wouldn't surprise me.
The Inferno takes place over 3 days too. The story over Easter weekend, so it starts on a Friday and it ends on a Sunday. And I got that feeling at the end when he's in her arms. It looked like a Renaissance painting or a statue of like the Virgin Mary. Yeah. Hey, that's her name. Yeah. Holding Jesus, like a Pietà, after holding him after he's dead or whatever, with the light shining. Also, if you notice when he's killing Mr. Burke, the light dims, the light goes out, it turns dark. So they're using the light and shadow and stuff with it.
Yeah. It seems like maybe there's a lot more layers to this than the surface. Which I'm sure is intentional.
That was my overall impression of the movie. Is there was stuff that I felt I wasn't understanding, but is there for a reason.
Yeah. I'm sure the white horse, obviously, means something. They didn't put that in for nothing.
It's not necessarily a strength of the movie, I don't think, because it's unclear and it's muddled. But I do think it kind of helps maybe defend the movie a little bit. That there was more thought going into it than we may give it credit for.
Yeah, Scorsese is very, very good at putting things in for a reason. He, whatever you think of him as a director, he doesn't just throw stuff in there to leave it muddled. That's why that's why they confused me with some of the choices in this movie. Some things just weren't very clear.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, my only other question was, why did what made Scorsese decide to do this film? Because it doesn't really, I don't know, to me, it doesn't really feel like it fit the trend of movies he was making back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for it to be so bland, it makes me really wonder what he saw in this film.
Like I said, there was more to it. Like, he said that he spent a lot of time around paramedics because of his own family, suffering medical problems and stuff like that, and he really grew to respect them and had been wanting to do a movie about paramedics for a long, long time, but hadn't found the right vehicle. So, I think he had wanted to do this for a long time.
And I also think no filmmaker really wants to set out to make a bad movie or a dull movie. So, and you never really know what you're going to get until you're in the editing, and trying to put it together, and then you might get a final cut of it, and who knows what he actually had in mind and versus how it shook out.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like I don't think he was like, I want to make a paramedic movie about paramedics, but I want it to be kind of bland and mediocre and one of my worst movies.
Yeah,
I mean, he's made worse, in my opinion, but
he has made worse. But this, we'll get into it in the rankings or the ratings. But it just was just so meh, kind of. It's all right. It's a movie.
I definitely appreciate it more after talking through it with you guys.
Yeah, I feel like that from every single movie we've done so far. There's so much more that you got that I didn't get. That we all collectively kind of made the movie better for ourselves.
What's the final tally?
This one was really easy. There were 2 fucks, and that was it.
That's it? Wow.
Yep. I think this might be there were a couple of times where he mentions God, but I didn't put that on the curse tracker because he wasn't saying it as a curse. He was saying you are a god when you do this, or you're God when you do that. But yeah, he says fuck when the gunshot victim dies. And I believe he says something fuck. I think he says fucking, we got to fucking save him to Tom after Tom's bashing Noel's head in. But that's it. I think this might be, until we watch National Treasure, this might be the lowest curse count movie that he's done.
Yeah. That's surprising. I felt like there was a lot of cursing in the movie.
There was a lot of swearing.
But
there was
not
a lot
from
of swearing
Frank.
from every other character. Yeah. Which I guess kind of mirrors the character, the movie in general. All the other characters have a lot of flamboyant traits and are a lot more flashy and showy than Frank himself is, where he's sort of the subdued vehicle we watch the rest of the movie through.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of dull. But with those 2 fucks, that brings us up to 71 fucks total across the 6 movies. And we're at a total of 159 curses.
Wow.
Dang.
It's actually kind of light. I feel like, 159 through 6 movies. Over on my trackers, the nudity was easy. There was none in this movie whatsoever, which is also kind of surprising for a Scorsese movie.
There was like half a hobo ass.
I didn't really count that.
There was a naked man when he's pulling all the ghosts out of the ground, but you couldn't see him. He was sort of sitting almost like in a statuesque pose. So again, maybe some of their Renaissance art,
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I feel like there was a lot of like Renaissance style shots, like intentional Renaissance style shots. Like they were trying to make them look that way.
This
I
was supposed
added
to
a
take place in
tracker.
Hell's Kitchen, right?
Was it?
I don't know.
Isn't that the neighborhood that they were supposed to... I don't know New York well enough to know.
I don't either. I don't think it ever mentioned anything aside from street numbers. So
I don't think they went specific streets. Probably only just because it could be any neighborhood in New York. Maybe they wanted it to kind of apply across the board. I added a tracker for this episode and every episode going forward. I figure we can track every single state and every single country that is visited throughout all of the different movies. So I went back and I did all the look through the movies that we've done so far. And this one was all in New York. So that makes 3 times that we've been to New York so far. And we've also been to California twice, Washington State, Louisiana, and Massachusetts so far. So far we've got 5 states. One of them 3 times. So.
All right, so this film brings us to 7 kills in 6 movies. I wasn't expecting him to kill anybody. Yeah, I wasn't expecting. Yeah, because in Color Out of Space, we counted Mom Jack as 2 kills.
Yeah,
so that put us at 6. So with Burke, that puts us at 7. Which I wasn't expecting him to kill anybody in this movie, even though he was having a mental breakdown. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that. But
pleasantly surprised that he killed somebody.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for him to kill people, and I'm happy that he escaped this film without dying. So we're still 5 for 5 on deaths. Hopefully, our
5 out of 6. More. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, 5 out of 6. My bad. Sorry, 5 out of 6.
Yeah, that's. I was kind of expecting because at a certain point, especially like. When I first saw the white horse show up, I actually thought that signified that he was going to die, and he was going to sacrifice himself for somebody. But that didn't end up happening. This is a monumentous occasion. We've done 6 movies. This is the first time that he's lived through all of them, which is pretty crazy.
Where does this mound of mediocrity land? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Okay, let's rate this bad boy. We'll start with Vince. Where does Bringing Out the Dead rate on your Cageometer, both movie and Nicolas Cage's performance himself?
So for movie, I'll give it a 5. I'm sure that might be a little too harsh in your guys' eyes, but I felt like for it being a Scorsese film, it just lacked a lot of It was very flat to me, very bland, which was a little disappointing because I was really looking forward to Nick Cage and him teaming up in a film.
Yeah,
but I really feel like he didn't really utilize Cage, and in this another film where Nick's character starts to develop mental issues, I feel like he really wasted some potential there.
Yeah,
and the story I just felt wasn't really written so well. It just kind of meanders. I get what they were going for and the descent and everything, but I didn't really feel like they took time to really develop his character. It was always just one incident to another incident to another incident, but the whole time the way that Nick plays it, he's just kind of bland, and he has like little moments of craziness or little breakdowns, but they never really escalate to anything bigger. It's always just kind of like he's just moving through with no real emotion or no real drive. So that kind of dampened the movie for me. I was expecting more out of it. As far as Cage, I'll give him a 6. I think he did the best he could with what was given to him, and I'm sure Scorsese had a lot of say in like don't go over the top or don't get too big, and I don't feel like that plays to Nick's strengths, and so I think he did the best he could, and I mean there were moments where his personality started shining, and those were the more enjoyable moments in the film for me.
Those big smiles that he gives a couple times, you're like, it's Nicolas Cage.
Oh, it is still Nick Cage. Yeah. And then when he's talking jive to to Marcus, like that was just pure. I was like, okay, good. I'm glad to see that he's inserting himself into this movie, whether Scorsese wants it or not, because it makes it more entertaining. Yeah. So I'll give him a 6. I think he did the best he could.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Scorsese held him back a little bit. Not in a bad, like in a, I'm not going to let you be the star of this movie. I mean, he held him back as far as like, don't go over the top, just be an everyman. People need to identify with you, and if you do your normal thing, people aren't going to be able to identify with you. Nigel, where does this rate on your Cageometer?
So for the movie overall, I think I was more lenient than you guys are. I gave it a 7 out of 10, which for my rating scale, 6 out of 10 is where good starts. 7 is, pretty good, not great. 8 would be great, 9 would be fantastic, and 10 would be perfect. I thought the performances of all of the characters in this were great. The supporting cast were standouts. They had these great little. It was really. I never felt like it was dragging, like I was being plodded along through the movie like you did, or and there was the repetition of 70s music and doing this and going back to the hospital and then go to 70s music, and I thought that was very intentional because it wanted to show how this job it's just one disaster after another blending in over and over again, and why he could wear somebody down. Yeah. So I actually appreciated that structure of it. I just think that it's in the, or like I was saying with supporting cast, they are very entertaining. There's always nice little vignettes, as he spends a night with each one of the main paramedics, and then just the other characters. Noel was kind of the one drag, and I thought Mary was kind of boring too. I didn't think she was all that interesting of a character. I didn't really get what her deal was, but everybody else I thoroughly enjoyed. Again, I felt like this movie there's more that I didn't understand, which I'm not going to fault the movie with. I actually tend to see that as a strength in movies a lot of times, because as we talked about it, I sussed some of that out, in this last couple hours, and this made me appreciate the movie even more. It didn't raise my score. I'd already marked it as a 7 out of 10 when I finished it. But certain things like that, like playing off of the symbolism of biblical stuff. There's lots of, like I said, lots of descents into hell moments, and him being an angel of mercy or an angel of death, and being conflicted between the two, and having a character arc that kind of carries him from one to the other. I don't know if it did a great job of it, but I appreciated that it was something novel that you don't tend to see in a lot of movies. The problems I think it had were it tried to do too much, and it muddled the overall structure of it. Like you said, it feels like it can drag in places, or you're not really sure where the movie's going or what it's trying to tell you. Like we said, I said there's the juxtaposition between him being conflicted over saving people or wanting to help people, and I think if it had played to one or the other more, it may have led to a more cathartic character development and climax of the movie, versus just kind of feeling a little bleak and confusing and weird. But so pretty good movie, shot really well. We talked about at the beginning that it's a huge, not only the cast, but like the crew was very experienced and very good at what they do. I think maybe the movie just suffered from not really uplifting script, but also a script that does a lot of stuff all at once, and maybe doesn't execute on all of it as effectively as if it had been more of a tightly focused story. As for Nick Cage himself, I give him a 7 out of 10 as well. I really liked his performance in this.
Really?
I do think he was held back by Martin Scorsese, but I actually see that as more of a positive because I feel like that would be more challenging for him as an actor than just letting him play to his strengths of freaking out more, which just seems to be, now we sort of associate that with Nick Cage, having a freak out. It's just, that's what you get Nick Cage to do. And I think when you have him pull back and try to do more of a serious dramatic role, it's more challenging. And to me, it shows off that what a good actor he is because he does it in a way, for me, that was believable. There were moments where I thought he was going to go completely unhinged, and I'm kind of glad that he didn't because I'm kind of tired of seeing that in every movie, and I feel like it worked in this movie to not have it. There's the moments where he breaks down, which I think is very humanizing, like when he's disgusted at the guy who can't kill himself and gives him the knife or whatever and freaks out. But that, because of how subdued we see him in the rest of the movie, makes those parts stand out a little bit more, and it feels more human to me. And also, I talked about it before, but just his physical looks and the way he physically looked and changed throughout the movie really highlighted the character's sort of spiral down into this hell over 3 days. Like he just looked more and more gaunt, more and more tired, more and more beat, more and more strung out. Again, not a great performance, but better than good in my opinion. I was actually surprised to see the scores are all like a 70%, across the aggregates and stuff, because that pretty much lines up with the 7 out of 10 that I had assigned for it.
Yeah. Yeah, not like everybody's favorite movie in the world, but like, people liked it on the whole. Not a super memorable movie, not something that you're going to be like, this is in my every year I got to watch this movie type of thing. But
I don't think I don't have a desire to watch it again, but I did like it for what it was.
Okay, on my Cageometer, I gave it a 5, which might be a little harsh, but if I'm being honest, especially the first time I watched it, I didn't like it. I felt like it was like, I feel like it was a movie with a lot of Scorsese movies and with great directors in general. You get more out of the movie the more you watch it. So the more that we've talked about it, I feel like my opinion of the movie has gone up, especially like the second time when I was breaking down the movie and writing out all my notes and stuff. I actually started to like it a lot more. I started to see all the little nuances and the little things that... I don't know, it just added more flavor to it, and it kind of took it from this sort of boring and pointless, at times pointless movie, and kind of made it more into, I feel like this is a love letter of sorts from Scorsese to paramedics. And the subject matter, like the story that they pulled from was kind of just meh, and I think that's maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why it suffers. I just feel like it's definitely not the most memorable movie in the world. It's kind of mediocre, kind of meh throughout the whole thing. Especially like it has all the hallmarks of Scorsese, like the music and the crazy, there'll be like a crazy montage of some weird cut, like when Tom Sizemore is driving down the road and they're doing that like super fast cut. And then later we see Nick Cage doing the same thing. Like those are very like Scorsese-esque things. It's just there's just certain things that just didn't like make sense as far as like the story and like driving the plot along. Like the crashing of the ambulance was just something that was just like, what was the point of that? Why did you do that? I thought it was going to lead to something else. Like, okay, now he's injured and he's also tired and he's also going through all this stuff, and maybe he starts like taking something to like get him through, and that leads to something else. But no, it's just, it happens and it's never brought up again. And there's a lot of little things like that. Like, I don't know. And I feel like Nicolas Cage was super, super underutilized. And honestly, kind of like, you could have thrown a lot of different people in here. I do agree with Nigel. Like, yeah, it shows off kind of what the range is of Nick Cage. And I kind of love that. But honestly, our next movie, The Weatherman, I just watched last night to kind of refresh myself before I wrote the lead in that we'll get to. And I feel like that movie does such a great job of him just kind of being a normal guy. And you see so much more out of his character than you did in this one. This is just kind of like he's just there for most of the movie, and he's a springboard for the other characters, which, like you said, all the other characters were great. Like, I could have used some more John Goodman. I really wish there would have been a little bit more. Ving Rhames was great in his little soul man weirdo character, and then Sizemore, of course. Sizemore is one of those guys, like, every time he shows up in something, I enjoy what he does. But for the most part, when he does show up, he's an asshole. And I got to expect that's something that comes from people's actual interaction with him. They're like, write a role for Sizemore. He's going to be an asshole. I felt like, the point of the movie is driving an ambulance is hard, and God damn it, these guys are heroes, except for when they're murdering crazy people and teaching suicidal homeless people how to kill themselves, or getting drunk and flipping an ambulance and all that kind of stuff. Just kind of felt like, okay, well, it's a Scorsese movie. We got to throw some flawed characters in here, which is, we definitely get some flawed characters. Everybody in this movie is flawed, deeply flawed. And sometimes it just felt like an excuse for Scorsese to just spin some tracks and make a little homage to the brave men and women who come and save our lives and stuff. I think that's what he was trying to. I think the whole point of this movie was look at what these people have to go through, appreciate them more, because they have to go through hell, literally. I mean, it seems like maybe that was something that we didn't really actually figure out, but I think Scorsese was going for, this is hell. So yeah, it also it shows them as kind of insane people who fuck up more emergencies than they help sometimes.
Yeah, that's the thing. To me, it didn't feel like it was very positive toward paramedics.
And like some of them are like just murderous psychopaths, and I don't want those people coming to my house in my worst possible moment. It almost this movie almost is like Jaws to me, in a way where it's like Jaws makes you not want to go swim in the ocean, and this movie makes me not want to call paramedics, man. So maybe it's the opposite of what he was going for.
That's kind of what I felt. Like it was like, I know it's kind of a dick move to say paramedics to be down on paramedics, but it kind of felt like, it wasn't painting them in a positive light. Sympathetic, yes, because of obviously they're dealing with all of this shit, but not positive.
No, it makes me wonder what the book is like, and how they're portrayed in the novel, because it definitely does seem a little odd. I mean, I can kind of understand, like he's trying to explain, like, these guys live in, like you guys said, like a hellish world, and doing this job too much or too often, it can drive you crazy, and it can bring out the worst in you, because you're dealing with death, and you could be the bridge between life and death, and sometimes the odds just aren't in their favor.
I think it's just like they all gotta find a way to cope with it. Yeah. And like the good paramedics find a harmless way to cope, or some way that's positive or uplifting. And the characters in this movie all seem to find negative ways to cope with it, whether it's like just being apathetic, or, macking on hookers, or pretending you're a preacher, or just beating up homeless people, or killing an old man in a hospital bed. Like, they're not ways that you should aspire to being able to cope with a hellacious job like this.
Yeah, for sure.
But that kind of feels very Scorsese.
It does.
Like, it's like you in Taxi Driver, they laud Terrence Bickle as a hero at the end of the movie, and you're like, he's not a hero. He's a psychopath who is going to murder people again. Like, that's the implication of the end of the movie. So it leaves you feeling conflicted over it, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, mission accomplished. As far as Cage, I gave him a 5, just because, like, I have seen Nick in roles where he's kind of he's this kind of like straight man to everybody's insanity, and I felt like he was just kind of boring for a lot of the movie, and I'm sure that was, probably from reading the book, the guy was kind of boring, just an everyman, and I felt like, I don't know, I feel like his performance could have been better. Not to say it's a bad performance, it was just kind of a middle of the road performance. That's kind of what I figure a 5 is. It's kind of like He wasn't amazing. He wasn't bad. He's never bad.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, he's never bad. But like, he was just kind of in the middle somewhere. Yeah. So I can't give him too much higher than a 5. But I do like you guys defending him and bringing up better like points about his performance.
I just felt like there were times where I stopped seeing Nicolas Cage in that role, which is the best compliment I think I can give an actor. And a lot of times,
that's true. Yeah,
in so many other things we watch, we're specifically trying to highlight that it's Nicolas Cage. So it's like he steals the show or steals the scene and everything he's in. But there were times in this where I felt like, the fact that it didn't need to be Nicolas Cage was almost a positive, because there were times where I felt like it wasn't Nicolas Cage, it was this guy. I could believe that this is the character Frank Pierce.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
So,
that's a really good point.
I feel like one thing that'll come out, like I feel like the initial implication of this show is that we're going to show all these movies and show what a zany nut Nick Cage can be, but that's not what I want. I want people to see what a secretly a genius he actually is. I think you'll see over the course of these movies, like, this dude has unbelievable range as an actor. Like, he can be a leading man, he can be a zany freaking drug addict, he can be anything. And I feel like a lot of times if Nick Cage goes over the top, or if Nick Cage doesn't go over the top, it's the director more than him. I think he did what Scorsese wanted him to do, and he gave the performance that Scorsese wanted him to give. And I'm not faulting Nick Cage at all in me not loving his character. I'm more faulting Martin Scorsese than anything else. But like I said, he wasn't bad. He was middle of the road.
And a lot of these negatives both of you guys bring up, I felt in the first half hour of the movie, maybe. But I don't know, I felt myself as the movie was going on, like I got into the groove of what it was trying to present, and it didn't seem as boring or plotting or senseless to me. There were certain things, like you said, crashing the ambulance was like a what? Why? Like, that really didn't seem to have, the guy barking was weird, didn't seem to care, but it wasn't as egregious to me as crashing the ambulance and then never addressing it again. Unless the point was just to say they're so hard up for paramedics that you can literally fucking crash the ambulance and then you be back at work the next day working the job.
Yeah.
So, But as the movie went on, I just kind of felt like, okay, I got sort of more of where they were going with it. Again, I still feel like it was muddled in a lot of the ways, but and that was just from one watch through. I would probably appreciate it even more watching it a second time. I don't really want to, but and I think that was like
that's what kept a great movie.
That's why I wouldn't give it an 8 out of 10, because it's not great. It's like there's movies like Taxi Driver where it's like, I want to watch that again at some point, because there's a lot of nuance in that and the message was more clear. That's like a 9 out of 10 movie to me. So I think a lot of it too is Scorsese. A lot of what he did in this movie, he's done in other movies better than what this one. I think that's why this maybe is just one of the more forgotten movies that he's done.
I feel like that's
better
actually
examples.
Led into my feelings towards the movie was like, this is a Scorsese movie, and it just kind of like, I don't know, it's all right. It's not great. It's not bad. But it's a Scorsese movie starring Nicolas Cage. I don't know. I was just expecting it. I was expecting more. And I think that's where my ranking comes from.
Here it is, the moment you've all been waiting for. These are the cagiest moments of the film.
You hearing them voices again? I just need a drink. What them voices saying to you? They say, kill Marcus, okay? That ain't funny, Frank. Look, I don't need... That is the last time you do this to me, Marcus. Where you going, Frank? I quit.
66 X-ray. X-ray. 66. First of all, I want you...
Rule number 1, don't get involved with patients. Rule number 2, don't get involved with patients' daughters, you understand? What about rule number 3? Don't get involved with dispatchers named Love. Now, boy, you don't know nothing about rule number 3. Cannot...
This is the worst suicide attempt I've ever seen. You feel that pulse? Here? That's where you cut. And it's not across, it's down, like so. Here, take it.
I can't.
What?
I can't.
Oh, I see. With all the poor people of this city who wanted only to live and were viciously murdered, you have the nerve to sit here wanting to die and not go through with it? You make me sick! Take it! Take it!
Frank, take it easy. Take it. What happened?
He flipped out!
Now, Frank, be cool, my brother. Look, you're having what you call a paradoxical reaction, right? But listen to me, Frank. Frank, where are you going? You're making a mistake. Yeah, you go.
All right, that's it for this episode of One Cage at a Time. As always, be sure to drop us an email at onecagepodcast@gmail.com to let us know if we missed anything, or hit us up with suggestions to improve the show, comments, compliments, or simply to gush about the legend that is Nicolas Cage. In our next episode, we'll be breaking down the 2005 dramedy The Weatherman. A story so compelling that it briefly took Gore Verbinski's attention away from the original Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, if only for a second. It was the only movie in that 3-movie period where he went and did something else. So he jumped away specifically to do The Weatherman. Nice. Nicolas Cage plays a TV weatherman in the midst of a midlife crisis who hates his job and the disrespect he receives from literally everyone in his life, including his Pulitzer Prize-winning father, played by Michael Caine. It also features Nick Cage getting hit by every kind of fast food imaginable by angry viewers upset by his shitty forecasting skills, which is non-stop amazing throughout. Man, I hadn't seen that movie in a long time. Like, it used to be on my kind of like, you know, those movies that you watch over and over and over again. I watched that movie a bunch back when it first came out, mid-2000s, and loved it. And then I just kind of forgot about it, I guess. And rewatching it, goddamn, it's a really good movie. It's kind of a sad but funny movie at the same time, sort of like a Anderson or Alexander Payne type of movie, like Nebraska or About Schmidt, something like that. Have you seen those movies at all? But yeah, it's a great flick. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. It's kind of a, I don't know, it feels like an indie movie, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's kind of a departure for Gore Verbinski a little bit, and Nick Cage is fucking amazing in it. Make sure to check it out.
It's on Crackle.
Is it?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just looking at Crackle.
Make sure to check it out wherever fine films are sold or on your streaming service of choice. Until then, we'll say goodbye the way we do each and every episode with our Nicolas Cage quote of the film.
Does everyone you meet just spill their guts on you like this?
Mostly. Must be my face. My mother always said I look like a priest.
You do. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to One Cage at a Time. Visit us online at onecageatatime.com or follow us on the social media platform of your choice for more Nicolas Cage goodness. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you really like the show, become a member of our Patreon, where you can download unedited and ad-free episodes, as well as listen to our follow-up show, Back Into the Cage, where we re-examine each movie to discuss what we missed the first time around, answer listener questions, and wax poetic about the man, the myth, the legend that is Nicolas Cage.